Man, I love this guitar. It's a Maton 325C and it's just about 12 years now since it was made. I was actually working at Maton at the time and was fortunate enough to be part of the team there that ran the CNC wood routers that machined most of the parts. That meant I could carefully choose every single part of this guitar. So for that reason, just about every stick of timber in this thing is quarter sawn with really straight grain and no run out. And I think it's paid off. I mean, the instrument has been very stable. I don't actually recall ever even adjusting the truss rod in that 12 years. Amazing. So anyway, after I'd gathered all the parts, I actually built the body myself, and then it was sent through the factory to be assembled and fretted and finished and everything else. I really love the back and sides on this guitar. It's got this beautiful figure in it. It's Queensland walnut, which is a tree from the tropical part of northern Queensland. But my favourite part of the guitar is this beautiful bunya face. Bunya is a native of southeast Queensland, kind of like me. In fact, I had bunya pines in my street and all around my neighbourhood as a kid. Well, we call them bunya pines, but they're not actually a pine. In fact, they're a completely different genus altogether. They're actually more closely related to trees from South America, believe it or not. Old growth bunyas can live for over 500 years, but of course the timber in this is from sustainable plantations up on the Sunshine Coast. It's also a timber that has a really strong cultural significance to the First Nations people of that area. Firstly, it's an amazing looking kind of prehistoric tree. At 40 or up to 50 metres tall. They're usually the tallest trees in the landscape, and they have these very specific sort of upper branches that makes the tree almost look like a spear shooting up into the sky. And on top of this, for thousands of years, it was a tree that brought people together, because every 3 years, in late summer, around about Easter, they fruit really abundantly and produce loads of these giant green pine cone looking things the size of a soccer ball. They're huge and they're full of bunya nuts, which once you get the husk off kind of look like a giant garlic clove or something. They don't taste like garlic. They're sort of mildly sweet and they taste a little bit like chestnuts. And during this season, the Aborigines would have huge festivals with people coming from all over southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales. They'd come from hundreds of miles, some of them. Tribes would resolve conflicts and disputes. There'd be trading, corroborees, marriages and feasts. Not just of bunya nuts. There's loads and loads of bush foods, really abundant at that time of year in that part of the world. I've also read that the different trees were owned and I guess protected by a particular family or individual, and they'd be passed down from father to son, for generations. It's really amazing stuff, and yeah, I guess that's why it's my favourite Australian tree. As a kid though, I used to avoid the bunya pines, and that's because in that climate we used to run barefoot for most of the year, and the dried fallen leaves are really, really spiky and very tough on your feet. Let me know in the comments if you have an instrument like this that's made with native local timbers, and if you do, tell us what you know of the trees and of their habitat and what sort of relationship you have with those. I'd genuinely be interested to find out. I chose this particular face on this guitar from a huge stack of blanks, that stack taller than me, because it has lots of these medullary rays which run across the grain, and they actually make the soundboard a little bit stiffer than it would be normally, and so that way I could actually get away with sanding this a good 10% under spec. Inside the body I also tapered the bracings, and I kind of snuck in just quietly a solid blackwood bridge plate where this model would normally have a laminated bridge plate. In a guitar factory full of guitar players, just about everyone there had an image in the back of their mind of their kind of dream Maton, and I guess if the owners let everyone just build their own dream guitar, it'd just be chaos. So building outside the model specs was not really allowed. So again, I was super lucky to be in a position to have so much input in the instrument. I did though get away with one kind of very cheeky customization. You might have already seen it. Check it out. There's no dot markers on the front of the fretboard. I guess I just prefer the sort of cleaner look of the plain fretboard. So I kind of tweaked the CNC programming when my fretboard blank that I'd chosen was on the machine, and yeah, it went right through production without anyone actually noticing, or if they did, they didn't actually say anything, so I was pretty lucky there. But there was one customization that I really wanted to do at the time, but I kind of knew I'd get caught, and that's the headstock decal. I'm not sure about the current models, but in those days, it was only the electric guitars that had this curly M logo on the headstock, and I kind of preferred that and wanted it on its own on my headstock. Luckily, they print them down here on the pickguard, so today I'm going to take the logo from here and put it on my headstock. So the first thing I have to do is get a nice square-on photograph of both the pickguard and also the headstock. So here's my decal. It's already had one coat of lacquer, and I'll put a second coat on before I go tonight. It's getting kind of late in the day. It's also quite chilly at the moment, so I'm going to let those two coats cure overnight before I wet this and transfer it onto the headstock. To create this, it's fairly straightforward, to be honest. The top tip here is to put a ruler in your photograph, and that way it makes it easy to scale it and get it the right size within, well, I use Photoshop, but whatever software you like to use. I just made the image black and white, and then I inverted it and boosted the contrast to get a good black and white image. Then it's just a matter of kind of zooming in and tidying up the edges, deleting any of the sort of scratches from the plate or any other artifacts, so you get a nice clean image. Once I was happy with the image itself, I saved it as a GIF with a transparent background. If you're just going straight to the decal paper, it's not necessary because your printer won't actually print white. It doesn't actually have any white ink. But in this case, it's kind of handy because that way I could drag it in over the top of my image of the headstock and size it and move it until I was happy with its position. And then I could create these little guide circles. They'll go over the machine head holes so I can get it exactly in the right spot where I had it on screen. And I've also created some cut lines here. And that's because I'm really just planning to put a couple of clear coats over this to seal it. So there might be ever so slightly an edge on the decal visible. And this just means that edge will be kind of symmetrical and won't look too bad. The way to get rid of those edges, of course, is to lay up more lacquer and then let that cure and wet sand out the edge until it's smooth and then put a final coat on. But if I want to do that, I'll wait till summer because a build-up of lacquer, just regular aerosol lacquer, can take weeks to fully cure. And if you sand it too early, you're just kind of chasing your tail. So I'm just about ready to try and remove this old decal. And I've noticed there's a little tiny dint in the edge here. So I'm going to try and get some thin CA underneath this lacquer that's lifting, and then I'm going to fill it with some medium CA and level it. So that's pretty much flush now. It's slightly proud, but that'll come down in the next step. Because what I want to do is remove this logo, and the plan is to just gently abrade it. I think I'll start with about 240 grit. I want to avoid going through to the bare timber, so I'm going to start fairly fine and conservative, and we'll see how we go. Well, I'm using this dry paper, but the lacquer is just clogging it too quickly, so I'm actually going to shift up to wet and dry, I think. Okay, I'm already through to the decal. That's working much better. I just want to be mopping up the water constantly because I don't want it pooling and swelling the end grain inside these holes, because they're not going to be fully sealed, I'd say, when the spray paint goes by in the factory. This little block allows me to really localize where I'm sanding. So I'm just focusing on what's left of the decal, and then I'll shift to a fine sandpaper and do the whole headstock. So virtually all of the decal's gone. Really the only part of it that's left are these little tiny dots deep down in the grain of the timber. So what that means is that the decal's obviously been put on after just one or maybe two light sealer coats, which is kind of disappointing because it means that the decal's really deep in the finish. And you can see here I've started to actually go through to the bare timber. So what I'm going to do is switch back to dry paper, scuff the whole face and mask it off and put a sealer coat on it first before I go tonight. So last night in that area where I had to sand through to bare timber just to remove the last little specks of the original logo, I actually sealed that area with 3, maybe 4 coats of French polish or shellac. I just use the pre-mixed French polish that you get at the hardware store. You can airbrush this, but I just applied it with a pad. It's a bit of a knack to padding French polish, obviously, because it tacks almost instantly, but it seems to work better, I think, than spraying when you're trying to seal timber with it, or you're using it as a sealer, because it seems to just sort of push the shellac into the pores of the timber a little more efficiently. It works great, actually. It's kind of old school, but it works really well. So yeah, about 3 or 4 coats, and then this morning, really, it only needs a very light sand. I think I used 320, maybe 400 grit dry paper, and it just French polish just sort of powders off quite nicely. And really, all I had to remove was just a few little overlaps or something like that from padding. After that, I just scuffed the rest of the original finish to 400 grit and then dusted it off really thoroughly, and then used one of these guys, a tack cloth. I'm sure I've mentioned these on the channel before. Highly recommended. I wouldn't spray paint without them, to be honest. That gets the last of any little dust particles in there. Then I gave it a couple of coats of just clear satin lacquer, again just a hardware store aerosol can. I chose this partly because I already had it, but also because this satin, I've used this one before obviously, and this satin I knew would be a good match to the sheen on this guitar. This isn't a gloss guitar, it's probably 60-70% gloss or something like that, and yeah, it's pretty much a perfect match, so that's cool. This has come out super smooth, so I'm happy with that, but if you do get a few little particles or little nits in the finish, well, firstly, don't beat yourself up about it. It happens. It's just the nature of spray painting. Even the pros in spray booths get little blemishes in their finish. It's just part of the deal. But it's important with a water transfer decal to actually denib any little bumps or nicks. You'd probably use a bit of 1500 grit or something and just gently take those high spots down. And that's because if you put a water transfer decal over something like that, there's a good chance you'll actually see that little high spot under the decal. And it's especially important if you're planning to put a gloss lacquer over this with a view to wet sanding and buffing that to a high sheen, because if there's a high spot in the decal with your wet sanding, you'll actually go through to that, and I can tell you now it's going to ruin your day. Well, with this little project, my plans kind of changed slightly, and that's because at fairly short notice, I had to go interstate for a family commitment for about a week or so. So instead of just laying up a single coat of lacquer to seal the decal and then dealing with it later, I decided to just kind of go for it. So with that in mind, I sprayed a good 5 nice wet coats over the whole headstock. And then when I got back, I wet sanded it with 1200 grit just to blend that slight step from around the decal, just kind of blend that into the finish, and then put a final coat over the whole lot. And yeah, it looks great. Having said that, even after, well, it was I think about 10 or 12 days before I got back to the project, even after that time, before that final sand, the lacquer actually still smelt ever so slightly of solvents. And so what that means is that the lacquer was still kind of curing a little bit and potentially shrinking back. So I'm just going to have to keep an eye on it. And if the lacquer does shrink back over time and kind of reveal the edge of the decal again, I'll just have to deal with it when it happens. The next step was to remove the masking tape, and the trick there of course is to score the back of the nut, because there is a bit of a build-up of lacquer there and you want the masking tape to peel off cleanly. After that, it was a matter of just blending in the slightly ragged and sharp edge of the masking tape, or whether the spray paint meets the masking tape, I guess you'd say. And I just used a bit of 1200 grit and just very carefully worked that until it was smooth. So then it was a matter of just putting the machine heads back in. I gave the fretboard a good clean and oiled it, and also polished the frets, and then a nice new set of Elixir strings. So it's taken me 12 years, but finally the guitar looks exactly as I always had hoped and kind of imagined the guitar. And I hope you enjoyed that video. Also, if you are new around here, do check out the rest of my content and consider subscribing to the channel. So for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.